What happens when you throw out a customer only to find out he's Sylvester Stallone? This manager learned the hard way that first impressions can be dangerously misleading. The showroom floor gleamed under the soft glow of overhead lights, each luxury car positioned like a masterpiece in an art gallery. This wasn't just a dealership, it was a sanctuary for the elite, a place where money spoke louder than words. At the center of it all stood Nicole Harrington, the newly appointed general manager. She had clawed her way up in the industry, earning a reputation as a no-nonsense professional with zero tolerance for time wasters. This dealership, nestled in the heart of Beverly Hills, wasn't for Instagram influencers or dreamers. It was for the kind of clientele who signed million-dollar contracts without blinking. Nicole adjusted the cuff of her tailored blazer, her sharp eyes scanning the floor. A salesman chatted with a couple, admiring a sleek Lamborghini Urus, while another escorted a suited businessman toward the finance office. Everything was running like clockwork until the door swung open. A man walked in alone. Something about him was off. Not that he looked bad, but he didn't fit the mold of the usual clientele. He wore faded jeans, a weathered leather jacket, and dark sunglasses. His stride was slow but confident, like someone who had walked into 100 places like this and never questioned whether he belonged. Nicole's eyes narrowed as he made his way toward a classic red Ferrari Testarossa parked near the entrance. It was a collector's item, priced well into the six figures. Not something you casually touch without permission. She gave it a minute, hoping he'd move on. But when she saw him trail his fingers along the car's hood, she made up her mind. This was going to be a problem. Nicole straightened her shoulders and walked toward him, her heels clicking softly against the polished floor. She had no idea just how big of a mistake she was about to make. Nicole approached with measured confidence, her expression neutral but firm. She had dealt with men like this before, ones who wandered in, touched what they shouldn't, asked a few questions, and left without spending a dime. The man, still oblivious to her presence, traced the lines of the Ferrari's body like he was recalling an old memory. His fingers hovered over the emblem for a moment before he exhaled, almost nostalgic. "Excuse me, sir," Nicole said, her voice polite but direct. The man turned toward her slowly, his sunglasses masking any reaction. "I'm the general manager here. Do you need help with something?" For a moment, he didn't respond. Instead, he gave a slow nod, then spoke in a deep, gravelly voice that carried an air of familiarity. "Yeah, nice car. You got a '72 Daytona in stock?" Nicole's patience thinned instantly. A classic Ferrari Daytona? That wasn't a casual question. It was the kind of thing a real buyer would already know wasn't sitting on the showroom floor. She tilted her head. "We don't typically keep vintage models available for walk-ins." He gave a small shrug, unbothered. "Ah, well, thought I'd ask." That was enough for her. She'd played this game too many times. Some guy walks in, asks about something rare, and when told it's unavailable, launches into a speech about how much money he has and how he knows a guy who can find it cheaper. She forced a tight-lipped smile. "If you're looking to make a serious purchase, I'd be happy to set up an appointment with one of our specialists." But instead of agreeing, he gave a low chuckle. That was when she felt it. That tiny spark of irritation. It wasn't what he said, it was how he said it. The amusement in his voice, like he was entertained. She folded her arms. "Is something funny?" The man tilted his head slightly as if sizing her up. No, I get it." He waved a hand in the air. "I don't look the part." Nicole didn't confirm or deny it. He wasn't wrong. His jacket looked lived in, not tailored. His jeans had seen better days, and his boots. The kind of thing you wore on a motorcycle, not while shopping for an exotic car. She kept her tone professional. We tend to cater to a specific clientele. You understand? A long pause. Then he smiled. It wasn't a smirk or anything cocky. It was genuine, almost friendly. Yeah, I understand. Then he turned back to the car, running his hand along the side panel again, and that's when she lost her patience. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you not to touch the vehicles. He lifted his hands in mock surrender. Relax. I'm just looking. That was it. Enough was enough. Nicole stepped closer, lowering her voice. This is a high-end dealership, not a museum. If you're just looking, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. The man let out a small sigh, shaking his head as he adjusted his jacket. All right, all right. He turned like he was about to go, then stopped. Actually, mind if I take a look at that Aston Martin in the back? Nicole nearly laughed. Now he was just wasting her time. She gestured toward the entrance. Sir, I'm asking you to leave. Now. That was when a low murmur started among the staff. She noticed her assistant manager, Greg, standing a few feet away, his face pale, as if he'd seen a ghost. The receptionist had her hand over her mouth. Something was wrong. Then, before she could process it, a deep voice boomed across the showroom. Mr. Stallone, I'm so sorry for the delay. Nicole felt her stomach drop. She turned slowly, dreading what she was about to see. The regional director, Robert Tanner, was striding across the room, his arms outstretched. Welcome! And in that moment, everything clicked. The man she had just thrown out wasn't a nobody. He was Sylvester Stallone, and worse, he wasn't just a customer. He was the new owner. The room fell silent. Nicole's heart slammed against her ribs as she struggled to process what she had just done. Sylvester Stallone, the Sylvester Stallone, stood right in front of her, and she had just treated him like some random guy off the street. Her mouth felt dry. Robert clapped Stallone on the back, his smile wide and overly enthusiastic. We're absolutely thrilled to have you here, sir. I apologize for any confusion. Nicole wanted to sink into the floor. Stallone, still standing casually with his hands in his jacket pockets, barely reacted. He just gave a small nod, like none of this was a big deal. But it was. Robert turned toward Nicole, his expression a mix of panic and forced composure. Nicole, he said, his voice tight, would you mind explaining? She couldn't think, couldn't move. This was bad. Very, very bad. I didn't know, she said, forcing the words out. But Stallone cut her off. Nah, she was just doing her job. His voice was calm, almost amused. Looking out for the place? That's a good thing, right? Nicole blinked. Wait, was he not mad? Robert forced a nervous laugh. Of course, but Miss Harrington is one of our best managers. I assure you this was just a misunderstanding. Nicole couldn't read Stallone's face. He wasn't angry, but he also wasn't brushing it off. He was studying her like he was thinking about something. Then, finally, he said, So you're the one running things here? Nicole nodded quickly. Yes, sir. I was recently promoted. Stallone let out a low hum. You know, I gotta say, it's been a long time since someone told me to get lost. The room stayed dead quiet. Nicole opened her mouth to apologize again, but he lifted a hand, stopping her. I get it, he said simply. You thought I was some guy wasting your time. You got rules. You don't let just anybody walk in and do whatever they want. That's good. Nicole wasn't sure where this was going, but he continued. What if I was a real customer? What if I was some guy just dressed down looking to drop a few million here? You would have kicked me out anyway, right? Her stomach twisted. He was right. She had judged him, assumed, decided who he was based on nothing but a glance. She hesitated. I thought I was protecting the dealership's reputation. Stallone gave a small smirk. That's the problem, he said. You weren't protecting the dealership. You were protecting your idea of who belongs here. The words hit like a punch. Nicole felt her face heat up. She wanted to argue, to explain herself, but she knew he wasn't wrong. She had built her career on being sharp, efficient, decisive. But in doing that, she had also been too rigid. She had looked at a living legend, a man who had built himself from nothing and assumed he was nobody. But before she could say anything, Stallone turned to Robert. We're going to have a little talk, he said. Let's grab an office. Robert nodded so fast he almost stumbled. Of course, sir. Right this way. Nicole watched them walk off, her heart still racing. Was she about to be fired, or was something even worse about to happen? Nicole stood frozen, the weight of what had just happened pressing down on her like a vice. The showroom, usually a place of controlled elegance, now felt hostile. Her employees were watching her, exchanging glances, whispering under their breaths. She knew what they were thinking. She just humiliated herself, not just in front of a customer, not just in front of the staff, but in front of Sylvester Stallone, the owner. She forced herself to breathe, keeping her posture straight. But inside, her stomach churned. What was happening in that office right now? Was Robert scrambling to cover for her? Was Stallone laying out her termination like it was a done deal? Minutes felt like hours. Then the door to the office swung open. Stallone walked out first, his hands still in his pockets, expression unreadable. Robert followed, his face flushed, eyes darting around like he didn't know where to look. Nicole's throat tightened. This was it. She braced herself. Stallone stopped in front of her, studying her for a moment. Then, in that same calm, measured tone, he said, "Walk with me." Nicole hesitated for a split second before nodding. Every step felt heavy as she followed him through the showroom. The place suddenly felt too bright, too exposed. Her employees' eyes trailed after them. Once they reached a quieter section, Stallone finally stopped, glancing at a black Aston Martin DBS Superleggera. He ran a hand over the sleek frame. "You like this car?" he asked. Nicole swallowed hard. "Yes, sir. It's one of my favorites." He nodded. "Mine too." Silence stretched for a beat. Then, "You know why I bought this place?" Nicole shook her head, uncertain. Stallone let out a soft chuckle, almost like he was reminiscing. "Because once, when I was younger, I walked into a dealership like this and they treated me like I didn't belong." He turned to face her. "Kind of like what you did today." Nicole felt her chest tighten. This was it. She was done. But instead of firing her, Stallone just sighed. "I get it. You worked your way up. You had to be tough, had to keep the wrong people out. But the thing is, sometimes you don't know who you're looking at." He took off his sunglasses, meeting her eyes for the first time. "You ever hear that phrase? Every champion was once a contender who refused to give up?" Nicole nodded slowly. "Yeah." Stallone gave a small smirk. "I said that." She felt a rush of embarrassment, but also something else. Respect. Not for herself, but for him. He put his sunglasses back on. "You're good at your job. But being good at your job doesn't just mean knowing cars. It means knowing people." Nicole swallowed the lump in her throat. "I understand." He studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Good." Then, just as casually as he had arrived, he started walking away. Nicole blinked. "Wait. What does this mean?" Stallone paused, glancing over his shoulder. "It means you still have a job." Relief flooded her, but then he added, "For now." Her relief vanished. "Whether you keep it That's up to you." And just like that, he was gone. Nicole stood there, breathless. She hadn't been fired, but she hadn't been forgiven either. Now, she had something to prove. Over the next few days, she made small but deliberate changes. She started watching people differently. When an older man in a faded polo shirt walked in, she didn't assume he was a time waster. She had an actual conversation with him, and by the end of it, he had placed an order for a brand new McLaren. When a young man in a hoodie strolled through the showroom rather than making a snap judgment, she approached him like any other customer. Turned out he was a record producer looking to buy his third Ferrari. It was humbling. Every day she saw a reflection of her past mistake, and every day she corrected it. But there was one thing still lingering in her mind. Would Stallone ever come back? She didn't expect him to. After all, he was a busy man. He owned the dealership now, but he had a dozen other businesses, movie projects, brand deals. So when 2 weeks later he walked through the doors again, she felt her entire body go rigid. This was it. Had she done enough? Had she proven herself? Or was this the day she'd finally be let go? She watched as he took his time, strolling through the showroom, glancing at the cars with the same calm, unbothered energy. Then, without warning, he turned to her. "You've been working on it." Nicole stood tall. "Yes, sir." Stallone nodded, looking her over as if assessing her. Then, for the first time since they had met, he gave a small, satisfied grin. "Good." He gestured toward a Bugatti Chiron sitting in the corner. "Now, let's talk about my car." Nicole exhaled. She wasn't fired. She had earned her place, and this time she wasn't about to mess it up. The sale went through flawlessly. Nicole handled it personally, treating Stallone not as a celebrity, not as a billionaire, but as a customer, a valued one. When the paperwork was done, he leaned back in the plush leather chair of her office, arms crossed, watching her with that same quiet intensity. "You did good," he said simply. Nicole felt a wave of relief wash over her. But she didn't just feel relieved. She felt different, more aware, more in control. Stallone stood up, adjusting his jacket. "One last thing." Nicole straightened. "Yes, sir?" He tilted his head slightly. "What did you learn?" She didn't hesitate. "That I was running this place like a gatekeeper instead of a leader." Stallone's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. "And," he pressed. She took a breath. "And that success isn't just about knowing the product. It's about knowing people." A pause. Then Stallone gave a small nod of approval. "Now, you're getting it." With that, he turned toward the door. Nicole watched as he walked through the showroom, employees giving him respectful nods. This time, he wasn't just the owner in disguise. And she wasn't just the manager who had made a terrible mistake. She had been tested. She had learned. As he disappeared through the front entrance, Nicole felt something settle inside her. She had changed. And that was worth more than any sale. Judgment is easy. Understanding is harder. Nicole thought she knew who belonged in her showroom, but she had let her own biases blind her. She almost lost everything because of it. Every person has a story you don't know, and sometimes the ones who seem the least important are the ones who matter the most. So, before you judge someone based on appearance, status, or assumptions, ask yourself, what if I'm wrong? Because one day, you might find out the hard way. If this story made you think, hit that like button. And if you've ever experienced or witnessed something like this, drop a comment below. Let's talk about it. Remember, treat everyone with respect. You never know who you're really talking to.